Happy Easter. So I'm in Los Angeles, can you tell? I'm staying at someone else's apartment, courtesy of my dear friend Ellen. This is the apartment of the neighbor who lives on top of her in West Hollywood. But anyway, I tried to move that orange thing and it's a lamp, so I almost broke it. Um, anyway, I'm so grateful to be here, and travel is its own. Uh, it's a year ago into a different realm, and I feel like kind of like Guatemala. It's both all beautiful and kind of a forced march. Yeah, you got to be on your toes at all times. Anyway, I'm getting to see my friends. I'm going to go to this beautiful garden today, Descanso Gardens, and visit another friend of mine up in Altadena. And then tomorrow I go up to St. Andrew's Abbey, where I am a novice oblate. And so I'll see my kind of director slash contact up there, Father Francis. And I get to spend the night. They didn't have any room at the inn, but now they have turns out they had a cancellation. So um, I was up in the central coast over the weekend. Went to this beautiful place, Carrizo Plain, national monument, gorgeous wildflowers. I'll post a couple of pictures on my blog. Yeah, flew to LA from Tucson, rented a car. Um, you get into Los Angeles. I mean, it's totally familiar to me, and immediately you go into it because you're driving, and it's this whole thing of this other state of being where you're willing the red lights to turn green. You're just in this, you go into this phase where it's like, um, and then you just have to laugh. Anyway, I took a beautiful walk this morning up in the kind of Hollywood Hills, and so just briefly, this was kind of there's been many great things, but this is kind of an interesting thing that happened Friday morning as I was flying out of the Tucson airport. So I get my flight left at 7. So I drove myself there, parked. It's cheap park. There's like parking for $5 a day at the Tucson airport. A little different from LAX. But anyway, I got there early as I tend to do. So I'm there about like it's 5:30 or so, and I find Tucson Airport is not big, but I found there's a place just as before you really get to the gates where you can sit, and everyone walks by, but it's not super busy. So I thought I'm going to sit here and sort of pray my office and just have some quietish time because I didn't have time to do that at home. So I park myself, and there's this great thing, as you may know, I Breviary, it's called, that you can get on your phone that has the office on it. So I get that on, and you know, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and then Lord, open my lips. So I make the sign of the cross and launch into my thing, and so it's great. It's kind of quiet, and I'm like, oh wow, this is, meditating. Like in the beginning was the word. I mean, the value of the words, the treasury of the church, and just how the Psalms bring you back to just to be grounded in them as you're about to embark into, the world, the world, the world. So anyway, I'm sitting there, and probably, I don't know, it's maybe 5, 10 minutes in, and all of a sudden this woman, about my age probably, sort of walks up, and there's a bunch of seats to the left of me, and says, like, greets me, says, hello, good morning. And it's a sign of our culture, right? That so seldom does a stranger address you directly, especially in the airport where you're trained, right, to suspect and be afraid of everyone around. I mean, we're trained to do that, period. But anyway, she said hello, and I looked at, I thought, does she want money? Does she what is she crazy? And then I just saw, oh, she's a lovely human being, appears to be. I said, oh, hello, good morning. And and then she sat down and she said, "Did I see you make the sign of the cross?" And it just took me aback because it had been a while. It would have been several minutes before. I had no idea how she'd see me wear. I guess it was maybe a food court type thing across from me. Anyway, I said, "Yeah, I did. I did make the sign of the cross." And she said, "Well, I'm not Catholic, but I'm Christian, and can you tell me about like that? Like why did you make the sign of the cross, if you don't mind my asking?" And so it's just fascinating, you know. And I said, "Oh, well, I was, the Catholic. I am Catholic, and we have something called the Divine Office / Liturgy of the Hours. I pray it every morning, and yeah, it's just you make the sign of the cross. It's the Trinity. It's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's a way to enter into prayer. It's a way to end prayer. It's a way to acknowledge that um, the ground of our existence and that we're in the world. We're not exactly of the world." And I said I always make the sign of the cross when the plane is taking off. Lord, keep us safe, and if we go down, be with us. Help me to be kind to someone. I mean, who knows? Probably be shrieking, but it's a beautiful viaticum prayer I pray every time after I take the Eucharist. "O good Jesus, accept this Holy Communion as my viaticum, as if I were this day to die. Grant that thy most adorable body and blood be the last remembrance of my soul, the sacred names of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, my last words." So, viaticum, bread for the journey. I always, yeah, you pray those are your last words and your last thoughts, even though you just don't know. Anyway, so let's kind of do this, yeah. And so we had this, the point is, we had this lovely talk. She was a missionary in Venezuela with her husband for 10 years. She lived in British Columbia. She was an artist. So we had this wonderful talk about all kinds of things, how loath we are to how rare it is, I should say, that a stranger will speak to you, the incredible value of art. And she was going uh, back to her home because she has a new grandchild. I think it was her 11th or something like that. And we talked about this great, the sorrow of people these days who say, "Oh, I would never bring a child into this horrible world," and how sadly anti-life the whole culture has become. That people are so without hope, they think it would be like it's immoral almost to bring a kid into the world. So anyway, there you go. It was just a moment of, I think it was a reminder that, like, we of how we carry ourselves in the world. I mean, it's not like I need to go around making the sign of the cross every 2 seconds, of course, but people may notice us when we have no idea they're noticing us, and way more than the sign of the cross. Although it is kind of important. It is a sign of something, and but are we kind? Are we generous? Do we have a smile for the stranger? So it was just a wonderful way to start out the trip, and to carry that with me throughout the trip. Anyway, just as far as what I've been reading, I just wanted to kind of briefly mention. Um, so I got this book. It's called Get the Picture. Bianca Bosker, who's a New Yorker. She comes from Portland, I think, Oregon. A mind-bending journey among the inspired artists and obsessive art fiends who taught me how to see. And so I really like this woman. She's funny. She absolutely has a sense of humor. She's curious, but she, like many of us, perhaps, would walk around among contemporary art and just be, what is this even? I totally don't get it. So she embarked on a very serious quest. She kind of finagled her way in and worked for this uber hipster gallerist in Brooklyn. The guy would only be on the second floor because you don't want just any old person coming in on the foot traffic. I mean, it's just exactly that part of it was exactly, it confirms your worst fears about the hideously snobbish art world. In fact, the whole book was unbelievably depressing to the point that I actually didn't finish it because so she, I mean, I respect her desire to sort of understand art, but and so she did that, and then she worked for another gallery where they, New York also, kind of the Bowery. I think they weren't quite so snobbish. She went to this huge Miami Basel art fair thing, which just sounded hideous. She kind of got into it. She sold some art. Then she ends up working at the Guggenheim in New York as a guard. She did some other thing, I can't remember what. Oh, she worked as an assistant to this other contemporary artist who she absolutely loved. But I, I kept waiting for her to get to sort of um, some kind of universal, some kind of meaning or the I mean, you read, for example, the letters of Van Gogh, and in and of completely apart from his painting, they are a work of art, of this spirit, this incredible spirit, this questing, deeply intelligent artist who's devoted his life. And the artist she worked for, who was a woman, had also devoted her life to art. So it's kind of an interesting question. Her art did absolutely nothing for me, this woman. She's like croissants made out of hair or a fish that's in a woman's breast in a bra with a fish across it, with like, why? Like, what? Okay, it's like decorative. It's got like pop poppy colors. It's like what? And I just don't. And Bianca, was like completely satisfied and like enthralled and felt like she had learned how to see color. And I mean, okay, so here's just briefly, and then I'll be quiet because I'm reading another book that I like better, and to each his own. But anyway, she's talking about these two collectors who she obviously totally admires, Rob and Eric. Rob and Eric got married, and while waiting for a table for brunch one morning during their honeymoon in San Francisco, wandered over to a park to check out art by local artists. So this is how it all begins. They see a David Hockney. They don't even know who he is. They're from the Midwest or something. So they're entranced by David Hockney, who I also am not, doesn't do all that much for me, even though I know he's, anyway. Um, so 3 years later, they're shopping for an anniversary gift when Eric suggested that instead of spending $5 grand on the limited edition Hockney book they were coveting, maybe they could get an original work of contemporary art instead. Okay, great. So they consult ArtNet, a hoity-toity art magazine, 10 emerging artists to keep on your radar. Then to a painting by Corydon Cohensage, probably pronouncing this word his or her. Anyway, this is the thing, it was a vaguely cartoony portrait of brick steps covered with a few tentacles of green grass. We were both just like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing I have ever seen, said Rob. They emailed the gallery. It was $5,000 sold. So these, they go on. Anyway, this is like, that's about as deep as it gets. A cartoony picture of a brick wall with tentacle. Oh, that's cool. And it's just, oh, I just want to weep. I read something, and again, you can argue, right. I am not an art connoisseur or an art scholar, anything like it, but it's just, do you have to be an art scholar to see the difference between that and just say, not that we have to be back in the 1800s, but I mean it is the 21st century, but I yeah. To see the difference, the point is, between the spirit of Van Gogh and the spirit that permeates thought, such as it is thought, like that. I just, my God, I read recently or heard that, I don't know if this is true. Students contemporary art students studying art at prestigious, do not even learn drawing. They don't learn how to draw. I mean, back in medieval times, I guess, you spend 4 years just learning how to, draw a pear or something. I can't say it's so. Anyway, let's just leave that. And you can, but it's been kind of a, I don't know if it's a bestseller, but it's been written about, and it just, again, I liked her so much. I just kept waiting for her to have this kind of epiphany, but it never really to me came. Um, could just be me. But here's another book that I'm reading, Christopher Neve. This is the same guy who wrote, oh gosh, I talked about it a lot, Immortal something or other. He wrote a more recent book that I absolutely loved about kind of artists, various painters in the last stages of their life. Uh, I'm going to write a column on that book, but this is an earlier book of his called Unquiet Landscape, Places and Ideas in 20th Century British Painting. Now, I know virtually nothing about 20th century British painting, although I do. I mean, anyway, yeah, I know virtually nothing. Let's leave it at that. But just to read books that are about art and about ideas that have some kind of humanity in them is really thrilling for. And you often find a painter that you never heard of that you absolutely admire, or just ideas. So here's contrast. Oh, we found a cartoony painting of a brick wall with a few tendrils of grass. That's the coolest thing I ever saw, too. This one paragraph from Christopher Neve. So, what does this book try to do? And he's all about, the best thing about to say about a painting is nothing. A painting cannot be explained. But he goes and talks. It was part of his job in England to go and interview painters and talk to them about their ideas, their lives, etc. So, what does this book try to do? It is not an art history book. It deals only with a very few of the artists who have worked in the English landscape during the last 90 years. They are not contemporary, but they are modern in the sense of old fashioned modernism, which still looks newer and more original than most of the work produced now. Each is discussed because he or she represents a particular idea. It is a journey in the imagination through the English landscape, thinking in paint. Painting is a risky process precisely because of the trials and errors and intuitive revisions that this kind of inarticulate thought involves. Um, but the truth strikes you when you see it as unmistakable because it represents not just a way of seeing landscape, but a state of mind. Uh, It is such half formed ideas that painters will sometimes discuss because their thoughts are at an angle to the pictures themselves and do not impinge too much upon them. Painting is a process of finding out, and landscape can be its thesis, the ever potent old catalyst used to map out our universal view. And I mean, nowhere in this other book, get the picture, is the word truth ever mentioned. She finally mentions the word beauty almost as if, and says it's almost a dirty word in the art, in the contemporary art world, beauty. Old fashioned. Oh, please, this is old fogey stuff. Sad to me. So, I mean, who doesn't want to read this book just after that paragraph, even if you kind of, may or may not, quote, get it, whatever that means, but you know that your imagination is going to be sparked. So, just kind of my thoughts. Take what you like and leave the rest. And we get to read this stuff and come. Someone else is going to be galvanized by the Bianca Bosker book. I think probably many people have been. All the better. And if it gets people to look at art and think about it, and I think it probably will. Good job. Or even to help you formulate your own. It invites you to ask yourself, okay, if I disagree with this, why? And just to end, so I got a couple of weeks ago a friend from fellow writer from Altadena, where I used to live, Pasadena, and north of just north, suburb of LA, texted me out of the blue and said, "I see you're going to be in Dublin this summer. We hope. Can I? I'd love to. Basically offers to underwrite a trip to Venice from Dublin, not from Tucson, And I'd be glad to put you up at a modest hotel for 4 or 5 nights because I think you'd love the Venice Biennale. And I'd love to see what you write about. I don't know if I'd love the Venice Biennale, frankly, uh, but I might. And more to the point, I have been to Venice once, many many years ago. Still, unfortunately, drinking. It's this is my life. It's like, well, it would be a huge effort, research, and I would go by myself and navigating and on and on. But what a beautiful, this is my life. How beautiful is that? Whether or not I go, that someone thought to offer that to me. So, who knows what will happen, but I'm already kind of researching Venice a bit. And so someone an old friend I visited yesterday gave me this other book, The City of Fallen Angels. John Berendt, who wrote that book about Savannah, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which I read. Was I that crazy about it? I'm not sure, but I will definitely try The City of Falling Angels. So there you go. We're going to keep reading, keep looking at art, keep exploring, keep walking, keep looking at gardens, and most of all, keep praying and stay very close to the Eucharist. I'm so excited to go to my abbey, and then I can really have solitude and silence for a little bit in the middle of this beautiful trip. Okay. Happy Easter.